Every star that has ever burned will one day die. Our own sun. Every point of light you have ever looked up and seen. Every star in every photograph of the night sky. They are not eternal, they are only slow. And when they die, they do not simply vanish. They leave something behind. A remnant, a corpse, a cinder of what they were, drifting in the dark, sometimes no larger than a city, yet heavier than a star. Some of these dead stars still spin, hundreds of times every second, sweeping the blackness with beams of silent radiation. And around a few of them, impossibly, there are planets, worlds that orbit a corpse, bathed in poison light, in eternal darkness and silence, the loneliest places in the entire universe. Tonight, let your thoughts grow quiet and slow, and let us drift, gently, into the graveyard of the dead stars. You do not need to stay awake for all of it. Simply let the dark come. Welcome to Vanished Worlds. In our first journey, we walked the silent streets of a lost city here on Earth. A civilization that vanished so completely the world forgot it had ever lived. But lost is not only a thing that happens to cities or to people. Tonight we look up and we find that the sky too is full of the vanished. For the stars are not the eternal, changeless lights we once imagined. They are born, they live, and they die, each in its own way, according to its size. The whole night sky is, in a sense, a vast, slow cemetery, filled with the living, and the dying, and the long dead. The dead stars are the strangest objects in all of creation. So let us go and visit them. Slowly, one grave at a time. We will begin with the gentlest of deaths, the quiet fading of a star like our own sun, and we will descend, step by step, into stranger and darker places, to spinning corpses, to worlds that should not exist, and at last to the deepest graves of all, from which not even light returns. There is nothing here that can harm you. It is all unimaginably far away, and long ago and yet to come. So let your body grow heavy, and let us wander out among the dead stars together. To understand a dead star, we must first gently watch one die. A star is a strange and beautiful balance. Deep in its heart, it is crushing the lightest element, hydrogen, into helium, fusing atoms together, and releasing, with each fusion, a whisper of energy. Across the whole vast core of the star, those whispers become a roar, an outward pressure of light and heat, forever pushing outward, and pulling inward, always, is gravity, the star's own immense weight, trying to collapse it into a point. For most of a star's life, these two great forces are matched. The outward push of fusion, the inward pull of gravity, held in perfect balance for millions or billions of years. A star, you see, is not a fire. It is a controlled, unimaginably slow explosion held in place by its own gravity for almost the whole of time. But it cannot last, because the fuel is finite. Slowly, over the long ages, the star burns through the hydrogen in its core. And when the core at last begins to run dry, the balance breaks. For a star like our sun, the ending is, at first, not a collapse but a swelling. As the core falters, the star's outer layers billow outward, vast and cooling and reddening. The star becomes a red giant, bloated, immense, hundreds of times its old size. When our own sun reaches this stage, some 5 billion years from now, it will swell so large that it may swallow the innermost planets entirely, Mercury and Venus, and perhaps the scorched Earth along with them. Hold that thought softly, without fear. 5 billion years is a span so vast, It is almost meaningless. Longer than the Earth has yet existed. It is not a warning. It is only the slow, certain rhythm of the cosmos. The same rhythm that plays out for every star. And then, for a star like the sun, the ending is gentle. It does not explode. Instead, in its final act, it breathes its swollen outer layers off into space. Vast, glowing shells of gas, drifting outward, softly lit, one of the most beautiful things in all the heavens. We call these clouds, by an old and misleading name, planetary nebulae. They have nothing to do with planets. They are the exhaled breath of a dying star. A shroud of light thrown off into the dark. And at the center of that fading shroud, something small and hot and dense is left behind. The naked core of the star. All that remains. It is the first of our dead stars. And to look upon it, we must follow the shroud outward and let it fade, and turn our gaze to the small, fierce ember at its heart. It is called a white dwarf, and it is one of the strangest objects you will ever be told about. Picture the core of a dead sun, all of its remaining matter, nearly the mass of an entire star, crushed down by gravity into a sphere no larger than the Earth. A whole star's heart squeezed into the size of a planet. Think of what that means for its density. On a white dwarf, matter is packed so tightly that a single teaspoon of it would weigh about 1,000,000 tons. One spoonful, 1,000,000 tons. The astronomer Arthur Eddington, trying to make his colleagues believe it, once imagined the star itself speaking. I am composed of material 3,000 times denser than anything you have ever come across. A ton of my material would be a little nugget that you could put in a matchbox. A matchbox, holding a ton of a dead star. That is the substance we are drifting past now. And here is the strangest thing of all about. The white dwarf. It is dead. The fusion has stopped. There is no fire left in it, no new energy being made. And yet it shines. It glows white-hot, fierce and bright. Not because it is alive, but because it is still warm. Warm with the leftover heat of the star it used to be, like an ember pulled from a fire that went out long ago. It is not burning. It is only cooling, and it cools so slowly. A white dwarf begins its long death hotter than 100,000 degrees. And then, across billions of years, it radiates that warmth away into the cold of space, a little at a time, fading and dimming and reddening, with a patience that makes the age of the Earth seem like an afternoon. It cools so slowly, in fact, that something remarkable follows from it. The universe is not yet old enough for any white dwarf to have finished. When a white dwarf finally cools all the way down, when the last of its warmth is gone, and it fades to a cold, dark, dead cinder, invisible against the black, we have a name for what it becomes. A black dwarf. A truly dead star giving off no light at all. But there are no black dwarfs. Not one. Not anywhere in the universe. Because the cooling takes longer than the universe has yet existed. Far, far longer. The first black dwarf will not appear for an almost unimaginable stretch of time. A number so vast it dwarfs the entire present age of the cosmos many times over. They are dead stars that have been promised to the future, but have not yet been allowed to arrive. And this is the fate of our own sun. Long after it has swelled and reddened, and breathed away its outer layers, what remains of the star that gave us every sunrise, that grew every tree, that warmed every living thing that has ever existed on Earth, will be a single white ember, the size of our world, cooling silently in the dark, circled perhaps, by the frozen ghosts of whatever planets survive, fading for longer than you can imagine, toward a darkness it will take an eternity to reach. Rest a moment with our sun's quiet ending, and then we will go on, deeper into the graveyard, to a death far more violent than this gentle fading. Not every star dies gently. The white dwarf, the cooling ember, is the fate of ordinary stars. Stars like our sun, and smaller. But some stars are giants, born with 10, 20, 30 times the mass of our sun. And a giant does not fade quietly into the dark. A giant dies in the greatest explosion in the universe. For most of its life, a great star does what all stars do. It fuses light elements into heavier ones, and holds itself up against gravity with the energy released. But a giant burns hot enough to keep going where smaller stars must stop. When it runs low on hydrogen, it begins to fuse helium. When the helium runs low, it fuses the ash of that into carbon, and then heavier still, neon, oxygen, silicon, each stage faster than the last. The star building heavier and heavier elements in great nested shells, like the rings of an onion, until it reaches iron. And iron is the end of the road, for iron is the one element that gives no energy back when it is fused. It is ash that cannot burn. And so, in the heart of the dying giant, an iron core grows inert, useless, and heavier by the second, until, in a single instant, it becomes too heavy to hold itself up. And then, in less time than it takes to say it, the core collapses. In perhaps a single second, a core larger than the Earth falls inward upon itself, collapsing to a ball only a few miles across, the infalling matter rushing inward at a fair fraction of the speed of light. And when it can collapse no further, it stops with unimaginable suddenness, and the rest of the star, still falling inward, slams into that impossibly hard heart and rebounds. The star tears itself apart in a flash of light so bright that a single dying star can, for a few weeks, outshine an entire galaxy of 100 billion suns. We call it a supernova, and it is at once the most violent and the most creative event in all of nature. Because in that unthinkable heat and pressure, elements are forged that a star could never make in its lifetime. Gold, silver, uranium, flung outward into space on the shockwave, to drift for ages, and one day, perhaps, to gather into new worlds. The gold in the ground beneath you, the gold anyone has ever worn, was made in the death scream of a giant star, long before the sun was born. We are, quite literally, walking through the scattered ash of dead stars. The explosion is not the end of the story, because at the very center, where the core collapsed and stopped, something is left behind. Something even stranger than the white dwarf. Something that should not be possible. Let the great light fade, now slowly, into the dark. And let us go and look at what remains. At the heart of the explosion, there is now a corpse, and it is the densest thing you can look upon without falling into a black hole. It is called a neutron star. Remember the white dwarf? A whole star's core crushed to the size of the Earth. The neutron star goes further, so much further that it is difficult to hold in the mind. Here, gravity has crushed the core so violently that the very atoms have been broken open. The empty space inside them, the vast gulfs between the particles, squeezed entirely out of existence. The protons and electrons have been forced together into neutrons, packed against one another with nothing in between. And so, A mass greater than our entire sun is crushed into a ball only about 20 kilometers across. The width of a single city, a dying star, heavier than the sun, collapsed to something you could drive across in 20 minutes if it did not destroy you utterly the instant you approached. The density is beyond all imagining. On a neutron star, a single teaspoon of matter would weigh billions of tons. The whole mass of the Earth, at this density, would fit inside a sphere you could tuck into a small town. It is as though nature took a star and folded it, and folded it, and folded it again, until almost nothing was left but weight. The gravity at its surface is some 200 billion times stronger than the gravity of the Earth. An object dropped from a single meter above it would strike the surface at over 1,000 kilometers a second. Though, long before it landed, it would be torn into a thin stream of atoms by the sheer pull. Nothing you have ever known could exist there for even an instant. It is a place of pure, indifferent force, and many of them are wrapped in magnetic fields of monstrous strength, trillions of times stronger than the Earth's, fields so powerful that, in the most extreme of these corpses, called magnetars, they could warp the very structure of empty space and crack the star's own surface in sudden, silent starquakes. And here, at last, we come to the strangest habit of the neutron star. Many of them spin. When a great spinning star collapses, its spin does not vanish. It concentrates faster and faster as the star shrinks, the way a spinning skater draws in their arms and whirls. By the time the core is only 20 kilometers wide, it may be turning not once a day, as our sun does, but hundreds of times every second. A city-sized corpse, heavier than the sun, spinning, so fast its surface moves, at a fair fraction of the speed of light. The fastest one we have ever found spins over 700 times each second. Hold that in your slowing mind. 700 times in a single breath. And as it spins, it sends out beams of radiation from its magnetic poles. Two narrow searchlights of energy, sweeping around and around as the star turns. And if one of those beams happens to sweep across the Earth, we see it. A pulse. And another. And another. Perfectly, relentlessly regular. A flash each time the beam points our way, ticking across the light years like the most precise clock in the universe. We call such a star a pulsar, a lighthouse of the dead. When the first one was found, its signal was so regular, so artificial seeming, that, for a little while, its discoverers half wondered, only half in jest, whether they had heard from someone out there in the dark. They had not. Well, they had heard a corpse spinning. Rest here a while, beside the spinning dead. For now, we come to the heart of tonight's journey. Around a very few of these pulsars, there are worlds. For most of human history, we knew of only one kind of world, our own, and its brothers and sisters circling our sun. We wondered, for centuries, whether there were planets around other stars. We hoped for them. We dreamed of warm blue worlds beneath distant suns. And then, at last, in the early 1990s, we found the first ones. The very first planets ever confirmed beyond our solar system. And there is one more of these graveyard worlds I must show you before we go deeper. Because it is, perhaps, the strangest single planet ever found. Far away, around another spinning pulsar, there orbits a world about the size of a large planet, a little larger, in mass than our own Jupiter. But it is nothing like Jupiter. Jupiter is a vast ball of gas. This world is small for its weight, crushed down, dense and hard. So dense that it is more than 20 times the density of Jupiter, far denser than water, denser than most rock. And what is it made of? Carbon. Carbon compressed under unthinkable pressure into crystal. Astronomers believe this planet may be, in large part, a diamond. A single, planet-sized jewel turning in the dark around a dead star. But it is the planet's history that is the eeriest thing of all. For this world was not born a planet. It began as a star. A companion star, orbiting the one that would become the Pulsar. And over untold ages, the dead star's ferocious gravity stripped it, pulled away its outer layers, its hydrogen, its helium, tearing the star apart across billions of years, until nothing was left but its dense, carbon-rich core. A star slowly murdered and reduced to a diamond. Think of that transformation, slowly, as you drift. A shining star that once burned with its own light, stripped bare by its dead companion, crushed, and left as a cold, glittering cinder, orbiting its killer, closer than you would believe. Its whole orbit small enough to fit inside our own sun. It is a jewel, but it is a tombstone, the compressed ghost of a murdered star, circling the corpse that killed it, forever. There is nothing like it anywhere in our own bright, living solar system. And it is real. It is out there now, turning in the dark, as it has turned for ages, and will turn for ages more. Rest with the diamond a while, and then we descend to the deepest graves of all. Not every lost world orbits a dead star. Some orbit nothing at all. Out in the vast dark between the stars, in the enormous emptiness, where there are no suns, no light, no warmth, for light years in any direction, there drift planets, worlds with no star, wanderers, did we call them rogue planets. And there may be billions upon billions of them, adrift in our galaxy, perhaps as many as there are stars, or more. How does a world come to be so lost? Most, we think, were born as ordinary planets, around ordinary stars, part of a family, circling a sun, as the Earth circles ours. But planetary systems, when they are young, can be violent places. Worlds pull on one another, orbits shift and tangle. And sometimes, a planet is flung, slingshot outward by the gravity of a larger neighbor, hurled clean out of its solar system entirely, and cast into the dark. Imagine it, gently. A world that once had a sun, that once had days and seasons, and a warm point of light in its sky. Torn loose and set adrift, to fall forever through the blackness between the stars, its sun shrinking behind it, year by year, to a single point, and then to nothing at all. An endless night, with no dawn ever coming. No sunrise for the rest of time. Upon such a world, the sky would be perfectly, absolutely black, save for the distant, unreachable stars, cold and unmoving. The surface would be frozen, far below anything we know as cold, locked in an ice that no daylight will ever soften. And it would simply drift, silent, dark, and alone, through a galaxy so vast that it might travel for billions of years and never come near another star. And yet, here is a small, strange warmth in the darkness. Some scientists wonder whether, deep beneath the frozen surface of such a wanderer, warmed faintly by the slow heat of the world's own core, there might, just possibly, be a hidden ocean of liquid water. A buried sea in eternal darkness, sealed beneath miles of ice, drifting through the void with no sun at all. We do not know. It is one of the many things out there in the dark that we cannot yet see and can only wonder at. Let the rogue world drift on into the black, and let us turn at last to the deepest grave in all the universe. We have walked among the cooling embers. We have stood beside the spinning corpses and the worlds that circle them. Now we come to the end of the graveyard, to the grave from which nothing, not even light, ever returns. When the very greatest stars die, the true giants, far larger than the ones that leave neutron stars behind, their collapse cannot be stopped. There is no force left in nature strong enough to hold them up. The core does not collapse into a white dwarf or into a neutron star. It collapses forever, down and down, into a point of such density that our very understanding of space and time breaks apart around it. A black hole. Around it there is a boundary, an invisible sphere, a line drawn in empty space that we call the event horizon. It is the point of no return. Outside it, escape is still possible. But cross it by even a single step, and the pull is so total that to escape, you would need to travel faster than light itself. And nothing can. So nothing does. Everything that crosses that line is gone from our universe forever. Light, matter, time itself, as we understand it. All of it drawn down into the dark and silent and never seen again. It is not a hole in the way you might picture one. It is not an emptiness. It is the very opposite. A place where a great mass, sometimes many times the mass of our sun, has been concentrated into a single point of unimaginable density, wrapped in a shell of pure darkness. A dead star, folded out of the universe entirely, leaving behind only its gravity and its silence. Around some of them, matter gathers before it falls, swirling inward in a vast, flattened disk, heated by the fury of the descent, until it glows brighter, sometimes, than whole galaxies. A ring of dying light, wrapped around a circle of perfect black. It is the brightest and the darkest thing in all the cosmos, in a single object. The last blaze of matter, screaming as it falls into a place from which it can never come back. And they are patient. They will outlast almost everything. Long, long after the last star has burned out, long after the white dwarfs have cooled to black, long after the universe has gone dark and cold and empty, the black holes will still be there. The last objects in a dying cosmos, drifting in an endless night, slowly, slowly evaporating, across spans of time so vast that every number we have ever used is meaningless beside them. The final graves, the last things that will ever be. But do not let that darkness trouble you tonight, for all of it lies unthinkably far away, in distance and in time. You are here, warm and safe, and held gently in a single fragile moment, beneath a living star that still shines. Let us drift now, slowly back out of the graveyard. We have seen how stars die. The gentle fading of the embers, the white dwarfs, cooling for longer than the universe has yet lived. The violent death of the giants, and the strange spinning corpses they leave behind. The worlds that circle those corpses, Draugr and Poltergeist and Phobitor, bathed in poison light. The diamond that was once a star. The rogue worlds, lost forever in the dark. And the deepest graves, the black holes, from which nothing ever returns. It is a vast cemetery, the universe, full of the dead, and the dying, and the long vanished. And yet, here is the thought I would leave you with, as you drift towards sleep. Every atom in your body, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, The oxygen you are breathing at this very moment was made inside a star, forged in the heart of one, or in the death scream of one, long before the sun was born. The dead stars we have visited tonight are not only graves, they are also the forges. Everything that lives, everything you have ever loved, is made of the ash of stars that died, so that we might, one day, briefly be. The graveyard, in the end, is where we came from, and it is, in the fullness of time, unimaginably far away, where everything will one day return. But not tonight. Tonight, you are here, beneath a star that still burns, on a warm and living world, in a small, quiet moment of light, between the long dark before and the long dark after. Rest now. Let the dead stars turn, far away, in the silence where they have always turned. They will keep. They have all the time there is. Sleep well. We will wander through another vanished world, another night.